To the make of a piper go 7 years. At the end of his 7 years, one born to it will stand at the start of knowledge, and leaning a fond ear to the drone, he may have parley with old folks of old affairs. Playing the tune of the fairy harp, he can hear his forefolk, plaided in skins, towsy-headed and terrible, grunting at the oars and snoring in the caves. He has his own whittle and club in the desperate battle, where the white-haired sea-rovers are on the shore and as stains on the edge of the tide. Or, trying his art on laments, he can stand by the cairn of kings, ken the colour of Fingal's hair, and see the moon glint on the hook of the Druids.
That was the music of the Great Highland Bagpipe, played out in the open air, which is the proper place to hear our bagpipe, surrounded by trees and rocks and mountains if possible, which is very convenient for us because in Scotland we have lots of these. But normally a lot of the piping is done indoors, and certainly the learning of the Great Bagpipe is done entirely indoors. The instrument itself is quite a complicated one. It consists of a bag, the most important thing, of course, the reservoir for the air, and a blowpipe here, which is used to put the air into the bagpipe. It has a simple non-return valve here so that it doesn't blow back up in your face. And it has a chanter, which is used for playing the melody. And that's the basis of it. The blowpipe to put the wind in, the bag to hold the reservoir so we don't have to stop the music when we're taking a breath, and then the chanter itself for the melody. But later on, people began to think this was a little bit unvarnished sound, so they added drones. And in our bagpipe, there are 3 drones, 2 tenor drones, which are supposed to be identical, and 1 bass drone, which is an octave below these two. These two, in fact, are an octave below the tonic note of the chanter. They're very simple construction. A drone is just 2 pieces of wood, boarded cylindrical form. One slides over the other in order to allow the tuning to be done. And in at the bottom is a very simple cane reed. Now this is a very old reed. No, this isn't a very old reed. This is a new reed. But the form of the reed is very old. Things like this were found in the tombs of the pharaohs, so it's certainly not a new invention. This is just pushed in, it's held by a bit of friction, and then the whole thing goes into the stock, which is tied into the bag. That one's the same. This one is almost the same. The reed's a little bit bigger, and this one has 3 sections because it's such a big length of wood it might break under its own weight or something. The chanter, on the other hand, is a little bit more complicated reed. This is a double beating reed, like the oboe. And it's falling apart here because things are drying up a bit. But the double beating reed gives a richer tone, and that's necessary for the music, the melody which is coming out. It also fits in neatly here. Good, well that's it. There are other kinds of bagpipes, of course, throughout the world, but this is the one which everybody thinks about when they're talking about a bagpipe. But you don't start to learn to play the bagpipe playing this particular instrument. It's too complicated and too difficult to do all the things at the same time. What you do is you start with a practice chanter. And the practice chanter consists of the blowpipe and the chanter part and a reed, but no bag this time. So you have to blow a bit longer at times. Sometimes you get more out of breath playing a practice chanter than you do playing a bagpipe. And incidentally, if you want to learn to play a bagpipe and you're not a Scot, don't worry about that at all, because almost every race in the world at one time had a bagpipe. It's one of the basic musical instruments. And so it may be that your desire to learn to play the pipes is at racial memory, because way back your ancestors played or at least heard a bagpipe of some kind. But if you're a Scot, it's a wee bit helpful because it may be that your family will be a little bit more supportive. Sometimes families are not too keen on listening to the bagpipe close up. I never understand that myself. Anyway, that's it. This is the equipment you require, and you start off with some very basic scales and exercises. Well, now I've been joined by Catherine, who is taking the first steps along the long road to become a great and famous piper. Catherine, perhaps? Catherine's already had one lesson, but we just revised that one first, Catherine. So could you try playing the scale for me? If you remember how it goes, fingers nice and straight, because on the bagpipe we have to have levers for fingers, not playing with the tips, because our fingers tend to move faster than most musicians' fingers, at least I think they do, and the most efficient way to move a finger is just as a lever, nice and straight. So we keep the finger straight in all cases except one that I'll mention later. Okay, Catherine, try the scale. Low G first of all fingers on. And away, B, C, and D, and up to E. Good. F, high G, and high A. Perfect. Perfect. That's the first stage. Now then we have the grace notes, G, D, and E grace notes. You remember? Try that. Just nice and slow. G finger first. No, you haven't got the low A. That's good. No, do it on low A. Do it on low A. That's the tonic, the do of our scale, and it sounds nicer if you do it on the low A. Try that. D1. No, this one. On the E1. That's it. Just hold on. You did that nicely. But as John Burgess says, if you want to put a pupil off, just say you did that very well and then ask them to do it again. So would you do it again? G, D, and the E. That's it. Okay. What we've been doing is, that was the scale right along there. We don't use the bottom line or the bottom space on the stave, as it's called. We use the second bottom line, which is the G. And since we've got two Gs, we call this the low G. And then we do space and line turnabout, low A, B, C, D, E, F, high G, and high A is above the line with another line through it, a wee ledger line, as we say. Then you did this bit. You did the low A with the G grace note, D grace note, and E grace note. Well, notes are easily recognized. Grace notes are smaller than notes, and the tail is turned in piping, turned up the way with little dashes on it to show that this is a short note. Now the next thing that you had, I think already, was this double D, or throw-on D. And there are two ways of playing it, although most people always write it this way, whether they play it the other way or not. Half the good pipers in the world play it one way and half play it the other way, and I'm one of the half that does it this way, so you'll do it that way too, Catherine. All right, remember, you play a low G, a D grace note, a C, and a D. Like so. Have a shot. And get the low G sound first. All fingers nice and straight. Good. That's it. C. Smashing. Fine. Then the next thing that you got, and the last thing you got, I think, was a change of note with a grace note. Because, you see, if we play a tune without any grace notes, or that doubling or throw, it sounds a bit uninteresting, I think, anyway. And so if the tune you're going to learn, the Scots Wha Hae, would be like this with no grace notes. And that really doesn't do much for me or anybody. So what we do is we put grace notes in. And that throw-on D at the end, a lovely flourish. So let's try the change of note with the grace note. Low G to low A. So if you've got low G, you lift the finger up for the low A and you do a G grace note at the same time. Try that. Get the low G sound first though. got to do a grace note with this one at the same time. This one just comes up and stays, and the other one goes up and down. It's a bit like rubbing your tummy and patting your head at the same time. It's a bit complicated, but you'll easily get it. Try again. No, keep that one up. Try again. That's it. And up to the next one. Low A, a G grace note to B. Try that. Great stuff. Smashing, smashing. Now we're going to start a tune. The first bar of this tune, or the first measure, as they say, is exploded at the foot of the page. Incidentally, we use, of course, the College of Piping Tutor, which is the one most people, I think, in the world use. There must be, what is it, 155,000 people in the world playing bagpipes that learn from this tutor. Anyway, it's exploded out here to show you with the names of the notes below it, but you'll soon not need to have the names of the notes. And I'm just going to play you the first bar, or the first measure of it there, and it goes like this. And I'm going to play a wee low A at the start, which isn't in the book, isn't on here, because it makes it easier for you at this stage. So I'm going to play. Like so. And that was that double D thrown D at the end. And we do it very slowly at this stage, though later it'll sound fast. Okay, put your fingers in position for a low A, and you blow and you make a G grace note. You watch it here. I'll point to it for you. Low A. Blow the. Now G grace note. No, just this one. Just the one finger grace note. Try again. That's it. Chanter squeak. You've just got to reed squeak and bagpipe squeak. It's something you've got to get used to. We don't worry about it on the chanter. We worry on the bagpipe. We try and get rid of it there, but who cares here? Try again. Low A and then a G grace. Now, don't blow too hard. Try it again. It's just one of the fingers isn't quite covering, perhaps. Try once more. That's it. Now up to B. This finger up. Now G grace note down to low A. Do like this. Put your B finger down and do a G grace note at the same time. Good. Now down to low G. Now G grace note up to low A. And try again. Try and get the grace note and the lift at the same time. No, you were too late with the grace note that time. Too early the first time, too late. Get them both at the same time. That's it. Now up to B. Right, put the fingers down to low G and do the double D. No, this grace note here. Right. Now what we really should do is go over it again. But I want to show other people how to play the whole of the tune just now. So we'll just leave it at that, Catherine. Thank you very much. You go and practice that hard. Well, Catherine's gone away to practice that bit, and I'm going to go through the rest of that particular tune. But I need to get a rest for my chanter, because it's very important that you do take the weight off your fingers. You don't have to support the instrument when you're playing the bagpipe, and so it's good to get the same kind of sensation of muscles, etc. when you're playing the practice chanter. And it's another good use for bound volumes of the piping times. Well, I'll just revise the first bar of the tune, and I'll go on with the rest of that first part. Well, now, I'm playing the thrown D slowly because that's the way I want you to do it at the present moment. But eventually it's going to sound like so. But don't try that just yet. You're going to practice slowly to get it up to that speed. One other wee thing, near the end of the tune there's a low G grace note. And sometimes grace notes are performed without actually lifting one finger off and putting it back. This one is the low G grace note between B and low A. And it's done by putting the two fingers down and sounding a low G note, but a very short one, and then lifting the finger like that. It's important to make it firm, although it'll be a short grace note later on. Well, now for the second part of the tune, you require to know another of the doublings, the doubling on high G, and you also need to know two things called echo beats. Echo beats are quite easy. Echo beat on E is done by playing an E and then hitting the E finger on the chanter. So you get another E out with a low A grace note this time between the two. Like that. And the echo beat on F is done by playing an F and hitting just one finger again. So it's an E grace note that comes out. Like so. Well, they're both very simple. Double high G is not quite so simple. You have to do a G grace note on F followed by a high G note. If you're doing it from F itself, which is where it comes first of all in the tune, that's the easiest way to do it. Like so. Don't try to do it fast. It never becomes very fast anyway. If you were doing it from E, then it's the same idea. Play the E first, G grace note to F, and lift the G finger off for a high G. Or from low A, or from any note at all. It's always a G grace note to F, and then lift that G finger off for the high G. Well, have a look now at the second part of the tune, and it goes like this. And if you need to take a breath, this is a fairly easy read, and so I'm not needing to take too many breaths, but if you do need a breath, that's all right. Stop anytime you like, but start on the same note. And you find a fair bit of the second part is the same as the first part, because all music consists of repetition and variety. So we get variety in the first line and repetition in the second line. Well, so much for Scots Wahey. When you've had a fair practice at that, then you can pass on to the next lesson, which is the brown-haired maiden. And you need two new movements for the brown-haired maiden. One of them is half double F. Not the whole double F this time, just the half doubling. And it's played from both high A and high G in the second part, high A in both parts. That's all you have to do, high A, an F, and then a G grace note still on F. A lot easier than the doubling of D or the throw-in D, whichever you like to call it. And you can do it from high G, like so. The other new movement is what we call a slur on D, although that's maybe not a great name for it. And this is done by playing a D, make a G grace note, and then strike the three fingers on the chanter to give a low G grace note. Like so. Be careful that you don't do the two things at the same time. There's a great temptation for people to do like that, the two movements at once, but it's... And these are the two things you need, and that one comes at the very end of each part of the tune. Well, here then is the first part of Brown-Haired Maiden. I should just say there's a little trap here for lots of people, and that is that in the second bar of the tune, everybody wants to do a G grace note from D to low A, and it's an E grace note. So if you just notice that, maybe ring it in red ink or something to remind you, it's an E grace note down. Here it is then. So there we are. Very nice tune, very popular old song. The second part of the tune requires nothing new. And so as soon as you think you've practiced the first part enough, you can go on to it. And we start with the note we finished on, which was the D. And so it goes like this. Fine, you notice that little twist at the end. It's kind of common to lots of tunes. Composers like to let you know that you're coming to the end of a tune, and so they tend to do something just a wee bit unexpected. But don't you be taken unawares by it. At the beginning of the fourth line, you've got to do that little funny twist to get the right effect for the tune. Well, you practice that slowly and evenly and often, and then you'd be ready for the next tune. But before that, we're going to go out into the country again and listen to these next two tunes played the way they should be on the bagpipe with the right surroundings. Well, these were the tunes High Road to Gairloch and Highland Laddie, both very old marching tunes played on the pipes. We're now up to lesson 9 in the Green Tutor, but I'm missing out lesson 8 because it's just something you should read for yourself. It's all about accent and reading of music and phrasing and so forth. But I don't want you to worry too much about accent and phrasing at the present state. All we want to do just now is get the execution, the fingering correct. And then after you've memorized these tunes and after you've had a bit of practice at them at slow speed, then you can start thinking about how they should actually sound. Well, the next tune then is High Road to Gairloch, and this one requires 2 new doublings, the doublings of C and B. And double C is quite easy. You put your fingers in position for a C and you do a G grace note followed by a D grace note. And so it sounds like this. Quite simple. Try to keep them separate. Don't run them together. Don't do... You miss out the middle grace note that way. You've got to get nice and distinct. And you can do that from different notes. It's easier from C than anything else, but if you were doing it from low A, for example, just a G grace note up to C followed by the D grace note. Or from E, the very same. G grace note to the C, then the D grace note. And double B is very much the same thing, just one note down. Just the same B note followed by G grace note on B and a D grace note on B. And you can do that from lots of notes as well, from low G, and from C, and you can practice it from every note that's possible on the scale. Well, here then is the first part of the high road to Gaelic. Well, it's quite a difficult tune, really, compared to perhaps the other ones. Not really, if you've practiced the other ones enough to be ready to start this one. Notice that it's E grace notes going down after the double C's. Don't put G ones. Always an E grace note down there. There's nothing new in the second part, so when you've practiced the first one enough, you go on to the second part. But there is, however, another trap for the unwary, and that is in the last line. If you look at it, you'll see a double C, an E grace note to B, and a double C again. Now, people all over the world, every religion, sect, colour and creed, try to play a low A there between the two double C's, which is natural because they've done so many double C's to low A by that time, but it's a B. And that's the little twist again that the composer puts in to let you know you're coming to the end of his tune. Here then is the second part.